The sterile, blindingly white walls of the Fifth Avenue private clinic felt less like a medical facility and more like a high-end prison. I sat frozen in the velvet waiting chair, my fingers trembling as I stared at the black and white thermal paper in my hands. A baby, a tiny peanut-sized miracle, or a total disaster depending on how you looked at it. It had been exactly 4 weeks since that reckless tequila-fueled night at a downtown Manhattan club. I didn't even know the alpha's name. All I remembered was the sharp, intoxicating scent of winter cold mint that had completely short-circuited my usually practical, overly cautious omega brain. I was supposed to be practically infertile. My old family doctor back in my rundown hometown had literally told me my reproductive system was underdeveloped. Getting pregnant would be a miracle, Caleb, he had said. Yet here I was, one night of abandoning my defensive walls, one single mistake, and it had stuck. I took a deep breath, trying to quell the sudden wave of morning sickness that had been plaguing me all week. I had already made my decision. Growing up abandoned in a bleak suburban foster system, I had always craved a real family. This tiny life inside me was mine. I was going to keep it. I had a stable job as a project coordinator at a top corporate firm, a decent savings account, and enough stubbornness to raise this child on my own. I didn't need that mysterious mint-scented alpha. I shoved the ultrasound photo into my leather messenger bag, my heart pounding against my ribs, and bolted out of the waiting room. I just needed to get to the subway. I needed to go back to my tiny Brooklyn apartment, wrap myself in a blanket, and process this monumental life shift. I rounded the corner toward the elevator banks a little too fast, my mind a million miles away, and slammed straight into a solid wall of muscle wrapped in expensive Italian wool. Easy there. A deep, resonant voice rumbled, hands gripping my shoulders to steady me. The scent hit me before the voice fully registered. Crisp, winter-cold mint, underscored with a hint of dark cedar. My breath hitched in my throat. My blood ran cold. It was him, the alpha from that night. My eyes flew up, meeting a pair of piercing, icy blue eyes. He looked even more intimidating in the harsh daylight, radiating the kind of effortless wealth and commanding authority that belonged on the cover of Forbes. My brain screamed in absolute panic. I scrambled backward, my sudden movement causing my unzipped bag to tip over. Pens my wallet, a roll of antacids, and oh God, the ultrasound photo spilled onto the polished marble floor. "Are you all right?" he asked, his brow furrowing as he crouched down with effortless grace. He picked up my dropped company ID badge before I could snatch it. His eyes scanned the plastic card. "Caleb Foster, you work at the Manhattan branch." My stomach dropped into my shoes. Not only was he the one-night stand, but he recognized my company badge. Wait, the imposing aura, the tailored suit, the timing. Oh, sweet heavens. This was Ethan Sterling, the heir to the Sterling conglomerate, and the brand new branch director who had just transferred to our office this week. My ultimate boss. I was going to throw up, literally and metaphorically. My eyes darted to the floor. The ultrasound was lying face up just inches from his polished Oxford shoes. If he saw it, if he did the math, he would know. The billionaire CEO would know his one-night stand was carrying his illegitimate child. I would be fired, or worse, dragged into a messy custody battle against a family that could buy and sell me before breakfast. Desperation makes you do incredibly stupid things. I lunged forward, snatching a random piece of discarded medical paperwork someone had dropped near the trash can, and slapped it directly over my ultrasound photo, scooping both up in one frantic, trembling motion. Ethan's gaze dropped to the crumpled paper clutched to my chest. He had the eyes of a hawk. Before I could fold it away, I saw his perfectly sculpted eyebrows shoot up into his hairline. Grade 3 internal hemorrhoids. Ethan read aloud, his deep voice echoing slightly in the quiet hallway. Surgery indicated. I wanted the floor of this luxury clinic to open up and swallow me into the depths of the New York subway system. The silence between us stretched thick, agonizing, and completely suffocating. I could smell my own pheromones spiking in pure panic. Normally, I smelled like sweet, ripe oranges, but according to the doctor, I had just seen the pregnancy hormones had already begun altering my scent, tainting the sweetness with a sharp, slightly sour citrus edge. Ethan leaned in slightly, his aristocratic nose twitching. He looked confused, his icy blue eyes searching my flushed face, perhaps trying to place the familiar but slightly altered scent. Was he remembering the club? Did he recognize the omega he had marked with temporary bites just a month ago? Hi, I stammered, my face burning with the heat of 1,000 suns. To protect the tiny, fragile life inside my belly and to keep my dignity from being completely shredded by my new boss, I made the worst, most humiliating decision of my life. I puffed out my chest, looked him dead in the eye, and lied through my teeth. "Yes, Mr. Sterling, I am here for my hemorrhoids. It is a very serious, very painful condition. Excuse me." He blinked, the formidable, cold-hearted alpha completely derailed by my blunt, graphic confession. He took a half step back, clearing his throat. "Right. Well, take care of that, Foster. I will see you at the office." I practically sprinted to the elevator, doing a very awkward, stiff-legged walk just in case he was watching my retreat. It wasn't until I had unlocked the door to my Brooklyn apartment and locked it twice behind me that my knees finally gave out. I slid down the wood paneling, clutching the ultrasound in one hand and the cursed hemorrhoid diagnosis in the other. I had successfully hidden the pregnancy. I had successfully hidden my identity. But at what cost? My professional image was completely ruined before he even officially took office. Staring at my pale reflection in the hallway mirror, I placed a protective hand over my flat stomach and made a solemn vow. From tomorrow onward, Caleb Foster would become the most invisible, unnoticeable employee in the entire history of Wall Street. I just had to survive this job without Ethan Sterling noticing me again. How hard could that possibly be? Monday morning in Manhattan was usually fueled by relentless ambition and triple-shot espressos. For me, it was fueled by ginger candies and a desperate desire to become one with the beige wallpaper of our corporate office. I swiped my badge, keeping my head down, praying to the corporate gods that my invisible employee strategy would actually work. My stomach did a precarious flip as the elevator ascended, reminding me of the tiny stowaway I was currently harboring. I just needed to get to my desk, drown myself in spreadsheets, and avoid the executive floor at all costs. That plan evaporated the exact second I stepped into the project management department. I froze in my tracks. Where my squeaky decade-old office chair used to be there, now sat a sleek, top-of-the-line Herman Miller ergonomic chair. It looked like a spacecraft, and resting squarely in the center of its luxurious mesh seat was a plush, undeniably obvious bright blue donut pillow. My jaw dropped. I blinked hard, hoping it was a vivid hallucination brought on by pregnancy hormones. It wasn't. To make matters worse, my usual oversized mug of dark roast coffee had been confiscated. In its spot sat a steaming, offensively healthy-looking ceramic cup with a yellow sticky note attached. Herbal laxative tea for digestive ease from management. Management was Ethan Sterling. What in the world is that? Richard, the senior coordinator whose desk was adjacent to mine, laughed mockingly. He pointed a manicured finger at my desk, his voice carrying over the hum of the office. "Did you break your tailbone, Foster, or is the new boss already hazing you?" I felt the blood drain from my face, rushing straight to my ears in a fiery wave. My sweet orange pheromones spiked with an embarrassing tang of sour panic. I scrambled to shove the donut pillow under the desk, my hands shaking. "It is a postural support for my lower back," I lied, my voice cracking slightly. Before Richard could launch another devastating insult, the temperature in the room seemingly dropped 10 degrees. The crisp, overwhelming scent of winter-cold mint swept through the open-plan office, silencing the chatter instantly. Ethan Sterling strode down the aisle, flanked by his assistant and 2 department heads. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than my annual rent in Brooklyn. His icy blue eyes swept over the room before landing squarely on me. I stiffened instinctively, wrapping my arms around my slightly tender abdomen. "Please keep walking. Please keep walking." He didn't keep walking. He stopped right at my desk. The silence in the room was deafening. "Mr. Foster," Ethan said, his deep voice carrying an effortless, terrifying authority. His gaze flicked to the hidden donut pillow, then to the tea. "I see the medical accommodations have been delivered." Accommodations. I forced the word out, wishing the Herman Miller chair would suddenly open up and swallow me whole. "Mr. Sterling, this really wasn't necessary." "Nonsense," Ethan interrupted smoothly. His expression was completely unreadable, a perfect mask of corporate stoicism, but I could see the slight narrowing of his eyes observing my pale complexion and the way I subtly leaned against the desk for physical support. Human Resources is very clear about supporting employees with severe medical conditions. Richard let out a poorly disguised mocking sound. Ethan's gaze instantly snapped to him. The alpha pheromones in the air thickened to a warning level, cold and sharp, making the hairs on my arms stand up. Richard choked on his own spit, his face paling, and immediately looked down at his keyboard, typing aggressively at nothing. Satisfied, Ethan turned his attention back to me. Furthermore, Foster, I reviewed the security footage and noticed you lugging 3 boxes of project files into the archives last week. From now on, you are strictly forbidden from carrying heavy objects. Delegate it. He paused, his icy blue eyes tracing my flushed face for a fraction of a second longer than appropriate for a boss. And you will use the private executive elevator from now on. The main elevators are too crowded during the morning rush. We wouldn't want you getting jostled and exacerbating your situation. The entire floor collectively stopped breathing. The executive elevator that was reserved exclusively for board members and visiting billionaires. And here was the heir to the Sterling Empire giving the lowest-ranking project coordinator a golden ticket because of a fake hemorrhoid crisis. Yes, sir, thank you. I mumbled, utterly defeated. I sank down into the chair. Ethan gave a single curt nod, turned on his heel, and continued his march toward the corner office, leaving a trail of stunned silence and premium mint pheromones in his wake. As soon as his office door clicked shut, the floor erupted into frantic whispers. The consensus was clear: the new ruthless alpha boss was executing a highly sophisticated psychological torture on me. They thought he was mocking me, forcing me to parade my supposed medical embarrassment in front of the entire company. But as I settled into the seat, I couldn't help it. I let out a soft, involuntary sigh. The ergonomic mesh perfectly cradled my aching lower back, and the donut pillow completely relieved the dull, heavy pressure on my sensitive pelvis. I reached for the herbal tea, taking a tentative sip. The warm ginger and chamomile blend actually settled my morning nausea much better than acidic coffee ever could. I stared across the office at the closed blinds of the corner suite. I was absolutely positive Ethan didn't remember the Omega from the club. If he did, he would be throwing settlement papers at me, not buying me orthopedics. Yet behind that terrifying, cold-as-ice Wall Street exterior, this alpha was inexplicably considerate. It was the most mortifying, embarrassing care package I had ever received in my 25 years of living. But as I rested a hand over my hidden belly, letting his lingering mint scent calm my frayed nerves, a tiny treacherous warmth bloomed in my chest. The relentless hum of Manhattan traffic had faded into a low nocturnal murmur by the time the office clock struck 10. The project management floor was completely deserted, plunged into shadows, save for the solitary pool of light illuminating my cubicle. We were pitching a major tech acquisition by the end of the month, and I was determined to prove my worth. Hemorrhoids, or in reality a rapidly developing fetus, were not going to derail my career. My eyes burned from staring at spreadsheets, but a far more pressing issue was the churning in my stomach. The evening wave of nausea was hitting me with the force of a freight train. I rested my forehead against the cool edge of my desk, taking shallow breaths, trying to convince my rebellious body not to throw up the half-eaten bagel I had forced down at noon. Working late, Foster? Or did you collapse from the sheer agony of sitting upright? I jumped, nearly knocking over my keyboard. Ethan Sterling was standing just outside my cubicle. He had discarded his suit jacket, the sleeves of his crisp white dress shirt rolled up to his forearms, revealing an expensive silver watch. His tie, a sleek, dark navy silk piece, was loosened around his collar. "Mr. Sterling," I rasped hastily, sitting up straight. "I am just finalizing the projections. I am fine." He didn't look convinced. Without a word, he stepped into my cubicle and placed a brown paper bag from an absurdly expensive midtown deli onto my desk. "Eat," he commanded. I blinked at the bag, then at him. "Sir, I didn't order this." "It is warm apple cinnamon oatmeal. Very soft, easy to digest." His icy blue eyes flicked away, suddenly finding the blank whiteboard behind me. Fascinating. My assistant ordered too much. I was told it is highly recommended for gastrointestinal distress, and it won't aggravate your condition. My heart did a strange, completely unprofessional flutter. He had stayed late just to bring me soft food. I reached into the bag, pulling out the container. The sweet, warm scent of apples and cinnamon wafted up, and miraculously, my stomach didn't violently reject it. In fact, it grumbled in appreciation. "Thank you," I said softly. Ethan gave a curt nod, pulling up a spare chair. "I will review the projections while you eat." As I took the first bite, the silence between us shifted from tense to surprisingly domestic. But what really settled my nausea wasn't just the oatmeal, it was the steady, calming wave of his winter mint pheromones filling the small space. It was intoxicating. I found myself subtly leaning closer to him, my omega instincts purring in absolute contentment. For a guy who looked like he could execute a hostile corporate takeover before breakfast, his scent was ridiculously safe. An hour later, Ethan's phone vibrated with an urgent call. He stood up, stripping off his loosened navy silk tie and tossing it onto the back of his chair. "I need to take this in my office. Finish up and go home, Foster." "Yes, sir," I murmured. The moment his office door closed down the hall, something inside my brain snapped. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the intense surge of pregnancy hormones I was still learning to navigate. But the moment the heavy mint scent began to fade, an overwhelming primal panic seized my chest. I needed that scent. My baby needed that scent. I stared at the silk tie draped over the chair. It was saturated with his pheromones. "Don't do it, Caleb," my rational, independent New Yorker brain warned. "You are a professional. You are not a pigeon. Do not build a nest." Biology 1, completely and humiliatingly. With trembling hands, I snatched the tie. It smelled incredibly strong. I slid off my Herman Miller chair, grabbed the infamous blue donut pillow, and crawled under the dark, secluded space beneath my desk. Driven by pure omega instinct, I arranged the donut pillow in the corner, curled my body into a tight ball around it to protect my stomach, and pressed Ethan's silk tie right against my nose. It was heaven. Surrounded by the scent of winter mint, the sterile office vanished. The crushing anxiety of being a single pregnant omega faded into the background. Within minutes, my eyelids fluttered shut, and I drifted into the deepest, most peaceful sleep I had had in weeks. I didn't know how much time had passed when a soft, muffled sound woke me. I was half asleep, trapped in a hazy twilight state. Through my heavy eyelids, I saw a large silhouette crouching in front of my desk. Ethan. I should have panicked. I should have scrambled out, apologized, and resigned on the spot for stealing the CEO's tie to sleep under a desk like a feral animal. But I was paralyzed by a sudden intense wave of alpha pheromones. It was not aggressive, but thick with an aching, desperate tenderness. "Oh, Caleb." Ethan's voice was a barely audible, gravelly whisper. There was no coldness, no corporate authority, only a raw, devastating gentleness that made my chest ache. I felt a large, warm hand gently brush a stray curl away from my forehead. Then the heavy, comforting weight of his suit jacket was draped carefully over my shivering shoulders. He didn't pull the tie away from my grip. He just stayed there, crouching in the dark, bathing me in protective mint pheromones until I tumbled back into a dreamless sleep. When I finally woke up, the bright morning sun was streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. I gasped, shooting up in a panic. I wasn't under my desk. I was lying on the massive, genuine leather sofa inside the director's corner office. A plush cashmere throw blanket was tucked securely around me, and a fresh cup of ginger tea was steaming on the glass coffee table nearby. I stared at the empty, pristine office, clutching the cashmere blanket to my chest. My defensive walls, the ones I had spent years building since my childhood in the foster system, were developing a massive, terrifying crack. The lie about my medical condition was supposed to keep him away. So why did I feel like I was already falling for him? The Friday evening networking mixer was supposed to be a low-key celebration for the successful initial phase of the tech acquisition. Held in the glass-walled penthouse lounge of the Sterling building, it was a sea of bespoke suits, clinking champagne flutes, and the suffocating mingling of high-end perfumes and alpha bravado. I was exhausted. My lower back ached with a dull, persistent throb, and my feet felt swollen. I had retreated to a quiet, dimly lit corner alcove, discreetly placing my infamous blue donut pillow on a velvet stool before carefully sitting down. I just needed 10 minutes of peace before I could sneak out and take the subway back to Brooklyn. Well, if it isn't the director's favorite charity case. The voice dripped with gin and malice. I looked up to see Richard swaying slightly, his face flushed. He had been passed over for the project lead, and his resentment had been festering like an open wound all week. He was flanked by 2 other junior executives who looked uncomfortable but too intimidated to leave. "Oh, leave me alone, Richard," I said quietly, instinctively pulling my suit jacket tighter across my slightly thickening waistline. Richard sneered, stepping into my personal space. The scent of his cheap, sour whiskey pheromones made my stomach churn violently. How exactly did a junior coordinator snag the biggest portfolio of the quarter Foster? What did you have to do in that private executive elevator to get the corner office treatment? Shut up, I hissed, my face burning. I stood up, grabbing my bag, intending to walk away. But Richard's eyes locked onto the blue donut pillow resting on the stool. A cruel, ugly grin spread across his face. Is that what the medical accommodation is for did you break your ass sleeping your way to the top foster? Or are you just playing the pathetic broken Omega card to milk the company? He lunged forward, grabbing the edge of my donut pillow. Do not touch that, I yelled. It wasn't just a pillow. It was the one thing giving my aching body relief, a strange symbol of the quiet care I had been receiving. I yanked it back. In a drunken fit of rage, Richard shoved me. Hard. My dress shoes slipped on the polished marble floor. I stumbled backward, my arms flying up, not to catch my fall, but instantly wrapping around my abdomen to protect my baby. A silent scream tore through my throat as gravity took hold. I never hit the ground. A pair of strong, unrelenting arms wrapped around my waist, pulling me flush against a rock-solid chest. In a fraction of a second, the air in the penthouse was completely obliterated by a suffocating, terrifying blizzard of winter cold mint. The sheer dominance of the alpha pheromones brought the entire party to a dead, horrifying halt. Glasses shattered as people dropped their drinks in shock. Ethan! He didn't say a word. He gently righted me, keeping one protective arm clamped like a steel band around my trembling waist. With his free hand, the immaculate billionaire CEO of Sterling Manhattan grabbed Richard by the collar of his suit. Then Ethan Sterling delivered a brutal bare-knuckle right hook straight to Richard's jaw. It wasn't a corporate slap. It was a vicious street brawler punch that echoed like a gunshot through the silent lounge. Richard crumpled to the marble floor, groaning, blood instantly pooling from his split lip. Security. Ethan's voice was a low, lethal growl that vibrated through my own chest. Throw him out. If he ever sets foot within 100 yards of this building, or Mr. Foster, I will personally ensure he never finds employment in this country again. Two massive security guards materialized out of nowhere, dragging a whimpering Richard toward the service elevators. The cold, terrifying predator vanished the second Ethan turned back to me. His icy blue eyes were wide with raw, unfiltered panic. He cupped my face with both hands, his thumbs frantically brushing over my pale cheeks. His pheromones shifted instantly, dropping the aggressive dominance and wrapping me in a thick, soothing blanket of pure protective warmth. Caleb, are you hurt? Tell me where it hurts, he demanded, his voice cracking. I was shaking violently, the adrenaline crashing through my system. He was holding me so tenderly, looking at me like I was the most precious thing in the world. And in that terrifying moment, staring into his desperate eyes, the truth hit me with the force of a tidal wave. I was falling in love with him. But the realization didn't bring butterflies. It brought a paralyzing, suffocating terror. The ghosts of my past clawed their way up my throat. I remembered the cold, indifferent faces of my foster parents, the trash bags holding my few belongings, the universal truth I had learned at 7 years old. Nobody keeps the broken things, and the rich always take what they want. If Ethan found out I wasn't just a sick employee with a humiliating medical condition, if he found out I was the one-night stand carrying his heir, the Sterling family would crush me. They would take my baby, the only real family I had ever possessed, and leave me with nothing. The hemorrhoid lie wasn't just about saving face anymore. It was the only shield keeping my heart and my child safe. I am fine, I choked out, stepping out of his embrace. The loss of his warmth felt like a physical blow. I just want to go home. Ethan didn't let anyone else drive. He bypassed his chauffeur, putting me in the passenger seat of his black Maybach and speeding across the Brooklyn Bridge in heavy silence. When we reached my rundown apartment building, he walked me right up to my door. The hallway flickered with a dying fluorescent bulb. Caleb. Ethan murmured, his voice incredibly soft in the quiet corridor. He took a step closer, his towering frame seemingly trying to shield me from the rest of the world. He slowly raised his hand, his long fingers hovering just inches from my cheek. He wanted to touch me. He wanted to cross that invisible line. I couldn't let him. If he touched me, I would shatter. I took a step back quickly, sliding my key into the lock and pushing the door open. Thank you for the ride, Mr. Sterling. And for earlier. Good night. I didn't wait for his response. I stepped inside and slammed the door shut, throwing the deadbolt with a loud locking sound. Standing in the dark of my tiny apartment, the silence was deafening. I pressed my back against the cheap wooden door and slowly slid down until I hit the floor. I pulled my knees to my chest, wrapped my arms around my growing belly, and finally let the tears fall, sobbing silently into the lonely New York night. November in New York arrived with a biting chill, but the cold weather was actually a blessing in disguise. It gave me the perfect excuse to wear thick, oversized cable knit sweaters. My baby bump was no longer a secret I could easily suck in. It had popped into a distinct firm curve that made buttoning my dress shirts impossible. I was meticulously careful. I timed my bathroom breaks, wore my scarves long, and kept a stack of files strategically placed in front of my stomach whenever Ethan was near. But exhaustion makes you sloppy. It happened on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was digging frantically through my messenger bag for my misplaced corporate ID when a torn, folded piece of paper fluttered out, landing directly on Ethan Sterling's pristine leather shoes. He had walked up to my cubicle silently, as he often did these days. Before I could grab it, Ethan crouched down. He unfolded the paper. It was the ripped information leaflet from my prenatal vitamins. The top half, which clearly stated it was for pregnant women, had been torn off weeks ago. All that remained was a heavily highlighted list of high-dose medical ingredients: ferrous sulfate 800 micrograms, folic acid calcium carbonate, and aggressively high levels of B-complex. I froze the blood draining from my face. Ethan's eyes scanned the clinical text. He looked up, his gaze slowly, agonizingly dragging down to my oversized sweater. The fabric was clinging just enough to outline the undeniable, unnatural swelling of my abdomen. I saw the exact moment the color washed out of his aristocratic face. His icy blue eyes widened in absolute, unadulterated horror. "Caleb," he whispered, his voice shaking in a way I had never heard before. He stood up, the paper trembling in his large hand. "This medication list, the fatigue, the nausea, your stomach." He swallowed hard, looking like he had just been punched in the gut. "Is the mass growing?" My mind raced. The mass, he meant the baby. He knew. I instinctively crossed my arms over my bump, stepping back. "Yes," I stammered, my heart hammering against my ribs. "The doctor said it is growing at a normal rate. It is getting bigger every week." Ethan closed his eyes. A look of such profound, devastating grief crossed his face that I completely lost my breath. When he opened his eyes again, they were shining with unshed tears. "Why didn't you tell me it was this severe grade 3 hemorrhoid? Doesn't spread to the abdomen like this. Caleb, why didn't you tell me it had become a tumor?" A tumor. My brain short-circuited. He didn't think I was pregnant. He thought my fake hemorrhoids had mutated into terminal abdominal cancer. I opened my mouth to correct him, to scream the truth, but the words died in my throat. If I told him it wasn't a tumor, I would have to tell him it was his child. And the terrifying reality of my situation slammed back into me. Over the next few days, the atmosphere in the office became unbearable. Ethan treated me as if I were made of spun glass that was inches away from shattering. He looked at me with such overwhelming tragic affection that it made my chest physically ache. But my quiet heartbreak turned into sheer terror by Friday. The corporate grapevine was buzzing with explosive news. A prominent society magazine had just published a blind item stating that the Sterling heir is finalizing an alliance with the von der Woodsen heiress, and a winter engagement in the Hamptons is imminent. An elite, beautiful Omega, someone who fit his world perfectly. That afternoon, I walked past Ethan's partially open office door to drop off a report. He was pacing furiously, barking into his phone. "I don't care what the retainer costs." Ethan roared, his mint pheromones spiking with aggressive desperation. "Get me the best specialist on the East Coast. Look into legal interventions if we have to bypass standard protocols. I am not letting him be taken away from me. Prepare the documents immediately." My blood turned to ice. Legal interventions, documents taken away. He wasn't talking about doctors for a tumor. He was talking about lawyers. He had figured it out. He knew about the baby, and he was using the Sterling fortune to build a custody case before I even gave birth. He was going to take my child to raise with his perfect, wealthy new wife, leaving me with nothing but empty hands and a broken heart. Panic raw and blinding seized my throat. The foster system had taught me one golden rule: when the wealthy want something you do not fight, you run. I stumbled back to my desk, my vision blurring with hot, stinging tears. I pulled out a crisp sheet of Sterling corporate letterhead. My hands shook so violently I could barely grip the pen. "Dear Mr. Sterling, please accept this as my formal resignation, effective immediately." I didn't care about the tech acquisition. I didn't care about my career. I pressed a hand to my swollen belly, whispering a choked apology to my baby. I would pack a single duffel bag tonight. I would take the midnight train out of Penn Station, far away from Manhattan, far away from the Sterling Empire. I was going to disappear. It was the only way to save my family. The tech acquisition officially closed at exactly 4 in the afternoon on Friday. Beyond the frosted glass of the executive suite, the entire project management floor erupted into deafening cheers. Champagne bottles were opened with loud bursts, and the heavy burden of corporate stress finally lifted from the Manhattan office. I didn't stay for the toast. My duffel bag was already packed and shoved under my desk. My heart felt like a lead weight in my chest as I stood in front of the heavy mahogany doors of the corner office, a crisp white envelope burning a hole in my trembling hand. I knocked twice and pushed the door open. Ethan was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the sprawling, glittering expanse of the New York skyline. The Empire State Building loomed in the distance, a monument to the city I was about to abandon. He turned as I entered, his icy blue eyes softening immediately at the sight of me in my oversized beige sweater. "Caleb," he said softly, moving toward his desk, "you should be out there celebrating. You spearheaded this entire deal. The files are completely transferred to the server, Mr. Sterling," I said, my voice eerily hollow. I walked forward and placed the envelope directly onto his immaculate glass desk. "And this is my formal resignation, effective immediately." Ethan froze. The silence in the massive office was instant and absolute. He looked down at the envelope, then slowly back up at me. "What is this?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "I am leaving." I forced the words out, fighting the desperate urge to break down. "I am moving away from New York tonight." The transformation was terrifying. The calm, composed CEO vanished. A suffocating blizzard of winter-cold mint pheromones exploded into the room, thick with a dark, primal panic. Ethan snatched the envelope off the desk and, without even opening it, tore it violently into shreds, letting the pieces flutter to the carpet like snow. In 2 long strides, he crossed the room. He didn't hurt me, but his large hands gripped my shoulders, backing me up until my shoulders hit the cool, reinforced glass of the window overlooking the city. "Are you out of your mind?" Ethan roared, his eyes blazing with red-rimmed desperation. "You have a life-threatening, rapidly growing abdominal mass, and your solution is to pack up and vanish into the subway system to go die in some miserable corner where I cannot reach you." "I have to go," I yelled back, the dam finally breaking. Hot, angry tears spilled over my cheeks. "I know about the documents, Ethan. I heard you on the phone. You are going to take him from me, and you are going to marry that Vander Woodson heiress. You are going to use your lawyers to rip my family away from me." Ethan stared at me, his chest heaving. The sheer, unadulterated confusion on his face was so profound, it stopped my tears mid-flow. "Lawyer's heiress." Ethan looked genuinely unhinged, his hand sliding from my shoulders to gently, reverently cup my face. "Caleb, what are you talking about?" I was on the phone with the chief of oncology at Mount Sinai. I was ordering my legal team to set up a blank check medical trust to bypass the hospital board so we could get you into an experimental surgery trial. I am trying to save your life. My brain screeched to a violent halt. The Manhattan skyline seemed to tilt on its axis. "Oncology," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Wait, you are talking to doctors, not family lawyers." "Why in God's name would I need family lawyers to fight a tumor?" Caleb, Ethan pleaded, his thumbs wiping the tears from my cheeks. "I don't care about the Vander Woodson girl. That was a corporate public relations smokescreen my father leaked. I rejected the arrangement a month ago. The only thing I care about is keeping you alive." A bizarre sound escaped my throat. It started as a choked sob, mutated into a small hiccup, and finally erupted into a bout of hysterical, uncontrollable laughter. I laughed so hard my knees went weak, clutching my oversized sweater as I leaned against the glass. Ethan looked terrified, probably thinking the cancer had finally reached my brain. "Caleb, please." "You idiot," I gasped out, looking up at the most powerful, brilliant billionaire in New York City, who was currently looking at me like a lost puppy. I grabbed his wrists, moving his large, trembling hands down from my face past my chest and pressing them flat against the firm, unmistakable curve of my swollen belly. "It is not a tumor, Ethan," I whispered, crying and smiling at the same time. "I am pregnant. It is a baby. It is your baby." Ethan stopped breathing. He stood perfectly still, his wide eyes dropping to where his hands rested against my stomach. Right on cue, the tiny life inside me, perhaps reacting to the overwhelming surge of its father's pheromones, gave a soft, distinct flutter. Ethan gasped, dropping to his knees right there in the corner office. He pressed his forehead against my sweater, his broad shoulders shaking. When he looked up, his icy blue eyes were entirely melted, overflowing with tears. He buried his face against my stomach, inhaling deeply, drawing in the scent of my pheromones. Sweet orange. Ethan breathed, his voice thick with emotion. He looked up at me, a watery, devastatingly beautiful smile breaking across his face. I knew it, even with the sour edge. God, Caleb, I knew it was you. I stared down at him in shock. You knew since when? Since the clinic on 5th Avenue, he confessed, standing up and pulling me flush against his chest. But you looked so utterly terrified of me. You lied about having hemorrhoids just to escape me. I knew about your past in the foster system. I knew you had built walls to protect yourself. I thought if I pushed, if I claimed you as my omega, then and there, you would run. So I played along. I just wanted to be near you, to take care of you until you trusted me. He rested his forehead against mine, his mint scent wrapping around me like a warm, protective blanket, completely erasing the last remnants of my fear. But then your stomach started growing. Ethan continued, a wet laugh escaping his lips. And I found that torn vitamin label. I misread the ingredients. I thought I was going to lose you. You are not going to lose me, I whispered, reaching up to thread my fingers through his perfectly styled hair, ruining it completely. And you are not going to lose him either. Ethan didn't say another word. He leaned down and captured my lips. It wasn't the frantic tequila-fueled collision of our first night. It was a deep, searing, and profoundly tender kiss. The crisp scent of winter mint and the sweet warmth of orange blended perfectly in the air, filling the executive suite. The heavy, lonely walls I had spent my entire life building crumbled to dust against the glass of the Manhattan skyline, finally permanently replaced by the one thing I had always wanted, a home. 14 months later, the suffocating concrete heat of Manhattan was a distant memory, replaced by the salty, sun-drenched breeze of Long Island. The sprawling, perfectly manicured lawn of our new suburban estate was currently overrun by caterers, a string quartet playing classical pop covers, and half of the Sterling headquarters project management department. It was our son's first birthday. I sat on a large woven picnic blanket beneath the shade of a massive oak tree, watching the cheerful chaos unfold with a serene smile. In my lap sat Leo, a devastatingly chubby, giggling little alpha who possessed my sweet orange scent, but had inherited his father's piercing, icy blue eyes and an undeniable aura of absolute authority. Even at 1 year old, when Leo demanded a cracker, people instinctively scrambled to get him a cracker. Leo let out a joyful squeal, burying his face into his favorite toy. I couldn't help but laugh. It was the infamous blue ergonomic donut pillow. Ethan had adamantly refused to throw it away, claiming it was a crucial historical artifact of our courtship. Instead, he had sent it to a high-end designer in Milan to be reupholstered in plush, hypoallergenic navy velvet. Now, the cushion that was originally supposed to nurse my fake hemorrhoids served as Leo's absolute favorite tumbling mat. He has a strong grip, a familiar deep voice rumbled. Ethan dropped onto the blanket beside me, looking effortlessly handsome in a light cream linen suit, his tie completely discarded. The terrifying, cold-blooded Wall Street CEO was entirely gone, replaced by a ridiculously doting father who regularly paused multi-million-dollar board meetings to check the baby monitor footage. He leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to my temple, his winter mint pheromones wrapping around us like a familiar, comforting shield. "Are you tired?" he murmured, brushing a stray curl from my forehead. "Just overwhelmed," I admitted softly, leaning into his warmth. "I still cannot believe this is our life." Movement by the front gates caught my eye. A local rental van had just pulled up, and a courier was unloading a massive stack of extra folding chairs for the caterers. The courier wiped sweat from his brow, arguing aggressively with the estate's security guard. I squinted. The uniform was different, the posture hunched and defeated, but I would recognize that sneer anywhere. It was Richard. He happened to look past the wrought iron gates, his eyes scanning the luxurious, sprawling lawn before landing squarely on me. I saw him freeze. He took in the sight of my tailored summer clothes, the massive, flawless diamond resting on my left ring finger, and Ethan Sterling sitting intimately beside me, with his arm wrapped protectively around my waist. Then Richard's eyes dropped to the velvet donut pillow, and finally to the chubby baby Alpha sitting on top of it, looking like an exact miniature replica of the billionaire CEO who had fired him. Even from 100 feet away, I could practically see the gears grinding to a halt in Richard's head. The realization hit him with the force of a runaway freight train. The crippling, career-ending medical condition from last year had not been a gastrointestinal disaster. It had been the sole heir to the Sterling Empire. Richard's jaw dropped so far it practically unhinged. He dropped his delivery clipboard onto the driveway, turned around, and practically fled into his van, peeling out of the estate in absolute world-shattering mortification. "What are you smiling at?" Ethan asked, following my line of sight to the empty gates. "Nothing," I chuckled, resting my head on his broad shoulder, just enjoying the view. As the late afternoon sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the Long Island sky in brilliant strokes of gold, magenta, and lavender, the guests slowly began to depart. Soon the caterers packed up their trucks, and it was just the three of us left on the quiet lawn, bathed in the warm, fading light. Leo had finally exhausted himself, falling fast asleep with his little fists gripping the fabric of Ethan's linen shirt. Ethan held him securely with one strong arm, using his free hand to intertwine his fingers with mine. The ghosts of my past, the lonely, cold nights in the foster system, the deeply ingrained belief that I was meant to be abandoned, the terrifying emotional walls I had built just to survive, felt like they belonged to a completely different lifetime. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. I was loved entirely, flaws, lies, and all. Ethan squeezed my hand, pressing his lips to the crown of my head as the last rays of the sun warmed our faces. Whatever the reason, he whispered, his voice thick with an emotion that still made my heart flutter every single time. "Thank you for walking into that clinic on 5th Avenue, Caleb. Thank you for lying about your hemorrhoids, and thank you for stumbling into my life." I smiled, closing my eyes as the scent of winter mint and sweet orange drifted harmoniously on the evening breeze. "You are welcome, Mr. Sterling," I whispered back. I was finally truly home.